Oh man, I need some gas. I'll get close over here, give you guys some space to get out. Ooh, it's a scorcher today, as it is every day. Pretty sure the entire week is 100 degrees. That's okay. There we go. It'd be nice if I was on the S1000. This one sounds like a baby kitten compared to those bikes over there. All right, let's go. What's going on, guys? Motonosity here. Welcome. I feel like you might think that I would do this video after doing a video about all the things that I love, but for a bike that I actually do really like, it makes more sense for me to say the things that I don't like about it. I feel like just several months after getting a motorcycle that you've fallen in love with, or that you fell in love with before buying, it might tend to be a little bit more biased, and I feel like that's a video that would be a lot more valuable to hear after I've had the bike for a while and I can, you know, the honeymoon phase is over. I've established the things that I do like, but maybe not so much, or the things that, you know what, I didn't like it from the start, but, you know, I actually kind of like it now. But regardless, this is an amazing bike. I love the R1. I wouldn't have bought one if I didn't love the R1. I've owned one before, a 2009, so I'm no stranger to the platform, and I really do love this thing. You know, I've only got about 500 miles on the thing, but I feel like 500 miles is a good number to actually have some thoughts about it. And I'm definitely going to make a video going over everything that I love about this bike. So if you want to see that, be sure to leave a comment letting me know, and subscribe so you get notified of, you know, those videos when they go live. Today I'm talking about all the things that I hate about this bike. And again, don't get your panties in a bunch too much. It's all in good fun. These are mostly nitpicky things, some not so much. But yeah, I just like making these videos. It gives you a little bit of a balance to the praise that I usually give the bikes that I own. A little history on some of the bikes that I've had and some of the bikes that I currently have. I did have a 2009 R1, and I had it for about 4.5 years. Absolutely loved the thing. And towards the end of that ownership, I bought the 2017 R6, which, you know, was kind of a nostalgic purpose. I had the 2009 R6 and it was stolen, and I really wanted to have another R6. So after buying that bike, I eventually sold the R1, had some fun with the R6 for a couple years, and then I bought the 2020 BMW S1000RR. Still have that bike. Still absolutely love it. And we're going to be talking about it in this video because it has some connection to the feelings that I have about this bike. By the way, I put out a video going over my entire helmet setup. If you want to know how I have it set up and how I get my audio, how I do my settings on my GoPro, be sure to check out the link down in the description. You guys can see that whole setup and get your own helmet set up. All right, let's get to it. Number one, things that I hate, and I'm gonna say hate, but again, remember, things that I kind of dislike. Number one on the list is extremely nitpicky, and that's the lack of a fuel gauge. And honestly, it's always kind of bothered me. It bothered me a little bit on my 2009 R1. That one didn't have a fuel gauge either. What it does have is a fuel reserve light. So the light goes on when you have, I think, like around a gallon of gas left. And it's helpful. When you've ridden the bike, you know about how long you have to go, given how you've been riding and how you do ride after that light goes on. Usually you've got about 25 miles before you really run out of gas. But a few years ago, I owned a 2015 Yamaha R3, the 300 class bike from Yamaha. It's less than $5,000 for that bike. It has a fuel gauge on the bike, like actual bars that show you a fuel gauge as it's dropping. On the R1, you do not have any sort of gauge. Like, until your light goes on, you don't know how much gas you have left. I always found that surprising because the gauge cluster on the R3 isn't something that's particularly exciting. It's not very advanced. The one on this bike is, and it still doesn't have a fuel gauge. It does have a fuel consumed gauge, so you know how much gas you've consumed since you filled it up or since you reset it, but that's not really helpful for gauging how much gas you actually have left. In order for that to be valuable, you got to go look up how much fuel the tank can actually hold. Then you got to do some math and then figure out how much gas you might have left. You can't just get on this bike and without knowing anything about it, have an idea of how much gas you have left. But it is what it is. It's a race bike. What are you gonna do? Moving on, number 2, it's not as fast as an S1000. And on one hand, you might say, well, obviously, it's a BMW S1000RR. But at this point, you would expect for all of the leader bikes to be relatively close in power output and just sheer speed. But they're not. And we're not just talking tenths of seconds here. This bike is noticeably slower than my S1000. Oh, and then you might say, well, this is a regular R1, it's not the R1M, and you have a BMW with M package, not a regular S1000. But neither of those premium versions of the bikes really change the actual power output of the bikes. If you buy the base model, you're pretty much getting what you're going to get out of the premium bike, just without all the extra goodies. And then you might say, well, the BMW is a lot more expensive, but it's really not. The base price for the S1000 and the R1 is kind of close, but unfortunately, if you live in the United States, on the S1000, the bike is so restricted from the factory that in order to actually make it competitive with the R1, like if I were to race this against a bone stock S1000 without a tune, it would absolutely beat the S1000. So in order to get that S1000 to a position where it's actually competitive with the R1, you've got to spend a bit of money to get the flash and get rid of those restrictions. So that does add to the cost. If you're in another country though, the restrictions are nowhere near what they are on this bike, and so the actual comparison on price is a little bit better of an argument. But that brings me to point number 3, and with the S1000 on price, I feel like you're getting a better bike. Now when it comes to the M packages on both of the bikes, the R1M and the M Sport package on the S1000. On the S1000 you're getting a nice colorway, on the R1 you're getting actual carbon fiber. So on that point you kind of got to figure out what exactly you want out of it. But I feel like the options that you can get on the S1000 are more valuable for an all-around package on a bike. For example, on the S1000 you get cruise control and heated grip. I know some of you might say, well, I'm buying this bike as a raw race bike. I don't really care about heated grips and cruise control when I'm on the track, and that's a fair point. You know, 100%. Don't get that package if that's what you're going to use it for. But if you really want an all-around awesome sport bike that's a really good daily bike too, the S1000 is just a nicer bike to ride. You know, cruise control is a life changer on a motorcycle, even on a sport bike. And when the temperature dips below 65 degrees, you better believe I'm turning on those heated grips. So yeah, I'm kind of bummed that the R1 doesn't have the same kind of packages that the S1000 does. And I could go on and on about comparing this bike against the S1000, and I don't want that to be what this video is all about, but it helps to know kind of where my head is at with some of those points and why I might feel the way I do about this bike. Moving on, the quick shifter. Now, a lot of leader bikes these days, from every manufacturer, at least most of them, is including auto blipping downshifts on the quick shifter. So not only can you shift up without using the clutch, but you can also shift down. For example, I'll do it right here. Got the hand off the clutch, just gonna drop down, and there you go. But it's a little bit clunky on this bike. Even the upshifts, they're quick. It's nice. Like I've mentioned before that I like the notchy feel, but I feel like it's just ever so slightly sloppy. I feel like it could be faster. And on the downshifts, it doesn't really feel like it's auto blipping. It's feeling more like it's just dropping the gear and letting the wheel bring the engine RPM up. I wish it was smoother is all I'm saying on that. Next up is the heat on this bike. The 2009 R1 had an undertail exhaust. It's hot from the start. Once you do an aftermarket exhaust that's still an undertail, it's even hotter. And I thought with this bike that not having the undertail exhaust, it would be a lot less hot, but it's still really hot, and that gets a little bothersome after a while. Like if you're riding this bike for a long period of time, it's not the most comfortable thing just in terms of heat. But let's be honest, at the end of the day, it's not as hot as a Ducati. Good lord, hottest bike I've ever been on. Next thing I kind of dislike is the size of the screen on this bike. Now they first came out with the screen in 2015 when they did the redesign of the R1, and it was great, much needed addition on this premier flagship platform, but it's starting to show its age. It is very small. I want to say it's like a 3.5-inch screen, and when you have bikes putting out 5-inch screens, it's starting to look a little bit minuscule. And I know when they're just doing a refresh on this bike, it's not something that is really justifiable. That's something that they'll probably look at when they actually do another redesign in like 5 years, but it doesn't mean I can't mention it. But I think that's going to cover it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to check out the playlist that's on the screen right now. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already, and turn on post notifications so you guys get notified of all the videos that go live. And if you want to get any of my merch, you can get it at motonosity.com/shop. Otherwise, you guys have been awesome. I've been Motonosity. Remember, life's better with horsepower. Keep life live. I'll see you guys in the next one.